So it's been a few months since I made my last YouTube video. A few of you guys have asked me to do a bike check, a more detailed bike check video of my 2020 Enduro. So I'm going to actually post three videos, one of bike check of my 2020 Enduro and a bike check of this guy, which is a YT decoy. They're both fully custom builds, and they both have 180 millimeter forks, 29 wheels up front. Very similar geometry, very similar suspension. So I'll compare these two. Well, I'll do a separate bike check video of the decoy, and then I'll do a comparison of these two and why I chose to buy this decoy. But for now, let's talk about the Enduro. Had it for about 6 months now, uh, maybe 500 miles on it. And so let's go into some of the details. Here's the cockpit. It's a D80 carbon bar, trimmed down to about 780 millimeters. I've got a one-up 50 millimeter stem. I originally had a 35 millimeter one-up stem, but I changed it because I prefer a little bit more reach. A little bit longer cockpit. I wanted it to be a little more over the front wheels. That's why I did that. One up tool right here. Shimano XT levers, and these XT levers go to the Saint brakes. 203 millimeters up front and 180 in the back. For the dropper, I have a 170 millimeter one-up dropper and a Stile Italia saddle. It's got titanium rails. This saddle is really lightweight. It's more of an XC saddle. It's about 175 grams, so it's pretty light. XX1 cranks. These are some really old cranks from my previous bikes. So in terms of sizing, this is an S3 frame. I'm 5'8", 150 pounds, or 160 pounds geared up. So let's talk about the suspension. Okay, so out back I have a Cane Creek double barrel coil with a climb switch. It's currently running a 400-pound spring that puts me at about 33% sag. Sometimes I'll throw in a 450-pound spring that puts me at about 29% sag. I find that the leverage ratio on this bike is quite progressive, so that even at 33% sag, I'm not bottoming out very much at all. So it works fine with that much sag. Also, I'm not getting any pedal strike issues, so it seems to be fine. One thing to note is this bike has 60 millimeter stroke in the back, and you've got about a 10 millimeter bumper there. Okay, and it's a really firm bumper. This bumper is like almost rigid. Okay, it's super firm. So it's a 60 millimeter stroke, and you're basically never going to you're never going to be able to compress this bumper to zero. So you're not going to get a full 170 millimeters of travel in the back because of that bumper will not compress to zero. So this is actually a 65 millimeter stroke shock. If you're running 60 millimeter stroke and you've got that bumper in there that just will not compress to zero, you're basically losing quite a bit of travel there. I checked this bike without the shock installed. It looks like it could handle up to 190 millimeters of travel. So if you do decide to long stroke it a little bit, you could get away with going over 170. I'm probably at about 170, 175 absolute tops if this thing bottoms out all the way. But right now, it's not going to bottom out all the way. Just that bumper is just too rigid. It's just impossible for that thing to completely compress to zero, you know? So it's a 65 millimeter stroke shock, 10 millimeter bumper. That bumper, like I said, you press it as hard as you can. Most you'll probably be able to compress it to is probably 3 to 5 millimeters. So if you want to get full travel, it'd be better to long stroke your shock to 65 millimeters of stroke. Okay, in the front I've got a Lyric Ultimate. It's got the Vorsprung Smash Pot installed. That Smash Pot is a coil conversion. It's actually 180 millimeters of travel. So converting it to 180 millimeters does slacken out the head tube angle a little bit. It's at about 63.5 degrees. At 170 millimeters, it's 63.9 degrees. So it's just a slight difference in the head tube angle. Okay, in terms of the drivetrain, I'm running a X01 trigger, X01 derailleur, GX chain, one up bash guard, and I'm running a Z-toe cassette. That's a 9 through 50 tooth cassette. 28 tooth chain ring up front. That's good enough. Provides plenty of range since I've got that 9 tooth in there. It's been working out pretty good for me. This cassette's got probably almost 350 miles on it so far, and it's pretty much almost as good as new. No unusual wear or anything. Shifts just as good as day one. So this cassette that I got for about 150 bucks on eBay, it's working out pretty well. It's pretty light too. I think I mentioned it's something like 375 pounds or something like that. It's working out real good for me. In terms of the wheels, these are Ibis 942 wheels. They're really lightweight. This wheel set with rim tape and valves was 1,680 grams. So it's a really lightweight wheel set. It's 35 millimeters internal, 42 millimeters overall. Super light wheel set. It's been pretty durable so far. For the tires, I'm running a Minion DHR2 EXO casing. Like these tires for the back. In dry conditions, they're great. When it's wet, it slides a little bit, but it's not too bad. In the front, I'm running Assegai 2.5 inch 3C Maxterra EXO casing as well. EXO is working just fine for me. I'm not getting any punctures or flats or anything like that. So how much does this bike weigh? It's 32 and a half pounds. It's pretty damn light considering it's a full coil setup. With the pedals, you're looking at 33.3 pounds. With all the contents, essentials that I have, inner tube and all that stuff, one up tool, it adds about another pound to that. Now the 33.3 pounds is without the one-up tool and without anything in the SWAT box, okay? All those things that I keep with me on every ride weighs about 15 ounces, which is almost a pound. What I normally bring on my rides is some gels, the one-up tool. I have some tire plugs in there, a couple of zip ties, lens wipes, blood clotting wipes. I have a Tubolito tube. It works. It's pretty lightweight. And in this I have a pump, CO2, and tire levers, and some napkins. So that's what I carry with me on every ride. And I fill it about up to this level, stashing all that in there. So there's actually quite a bit of room here to store some additional things. You could store a couple of juice boxes. I've done that before on a longer ride, like the kids' juice box. I stored a couple of those in there, and able to carry all that other stuff in there. So it works pretty well for me. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. See ya.